All right, guys, we're going to be jumping into Seneca's letter to Lucilius, letter 15 today. And before we get started, I just want to thank you real quick for all of you guys that have been subscribed, have been watching the videos, have been giving the likes, especially the likes and thumbs up. That helps me a lot on this channel. It helps me to keep on producing these videos. So if you want to keep seeing these videos come out, then please make sure you drop a like on every video. It really, really does help. And let's jump into the letter. All right, he says here on bronze and brains. In verse 1, the old Romans had a custom which survived even into my lifetime. They would add to the opening words of a letter, "If you are well, it is well, I also am well." Persons like ourselves would do well to say, "If you're studying philosophy, it is well." For this is just what being well means. Without philosophy, the mind is sickly, and the body too, though it may be very powerful, is strong only as that of a madman or a lunatic is strong. Okay, so there's not a lot here, but I will break this down. He's saying basically in the times, the old Romans, they would start a letter by saying, "If it is well, if you are well, it is well. I also am well." All right, and what he's saying is what you should actually be saying is, if you're studying philosophy, it is well, because that is the thing that is good. That's what being well means, right? He's saying that without philosophy, the mind is sickly. Okay, and even though you might have a strong body, a powerful body, it is the strength of a madman or a lunatic, right? It doesn't have anything behind it, right? And what he's saying here, really, what's really important to understand about this is that the philosophy that we're talking about is not the philosophy that you learn in college, all right? It is the life philosophy. He's saying what is valuable, the only way to be good, the only way to be well, okay, being well, to cure the sickly mind is through the application and study of philosophy, to think about the mind, to think about life, right? To think about the best way to live life. And that's what we're doing as philosophers today. All right, in verse 2, he says, "This, then, is the sort of health you should primarily cultivate. The other kind of health comes second and will involve little effort if you wish to be well physically. It is indeed foolish, my dear Lucilius, and very unsuitable for a cultivated man to work hard over developing the muscles and broadening the shoulders and strengthening the lungs. For although your heavy feeding produce good results and your sinews grow solid, you can never be a match either in strength or in weight for a first-class bull. Besides, by overloading the body with food, you strangle the soul and render it less active. Accordingly, limit the flesh as much as possible and allow free play to the spirit." All right, so let's break this down real quick. What is he saying here? All right, so I mean, essentially what he's saying here is he's saying don't spend so much time on developing your physique. All right, now this is a hard one for me, and in some ways I agree, some ways I disagree, right? I mean, what he's saying is that, look, no matter how much you work out, no matter how much you build your muscles and gain this strength, you're never even going to be a match for a bull. So, and it is true, right? In a practical sense, if you're gaining muscle in order to be stronger, right? What is really the application of that strength? Where is it actually useful to you in life? A bull is going to be 10 times stronger than you, no matter what, right? And if you think about it in life today, okay, so you've got big muscles. Does that mean you can beat people up? Or you can defend yourself? Not really. Okay, not really. I mean, if someone knows martial arts, they know Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, they're going to whoop your butt. They could be half your size, right? Now, if someone doesn't know how to fight and you're big, yeah, you're going to win that fight most of the time, all right? But what about guns? What about knives? What about weapons? It's like, it's not really that effective. Like you're not going to be as strong as you think. It's not going to be as effective being that strong as what you think it is. Okay, so he's making a good point here. All right, again, I lift weights. I build my physique, but as we'll get to in a little bit here, I don't spend nearly as much time as I used to, and there's some good reasons for this, and it's not even necessary, which he's also going to talk about, which is interesting. He had some wisdom about that all the way back then, even they didn't know anything about really bodybuilding or anything like that. So he says also here that your heavy feeding, produces good results. So, eating a lot, you can gain muscles, all right? But overloading the body with food, he's saying you strangle the soul and render it less active. And there's some truth to that, right? I mean, the more that you eat, if you're eating all the time, you're going to be less active. You're going to feel more lazy. I think that's what he's getting at there. And so he's saying, limit the flesh as much as possible, right? And instead work on the spirit. That's what he's saying. Allow free play to the spirit. All right. So in verse 3, he says here, many inconveniences beset those who devote themselves to such pursuits. In the first place, they have their exercises at which they must work and waste their life force and render it less fit to bear a strain on the severer studies. Okay, so let's talk about that. So he's saying the first thing that happens is that you've got all this stuff you got to do. You got to, spend all your energy working out, lifting weights, doing all this stuff, and then, so the other stuff that you're supposed to do that's actually harder, the mental strain, you're less able to do. And I found this to be true. I mean, this is true. If you work out too much, you're tired. Right? I mean, when I used to do 20-mile runs, I'm done for the day. I'm not doing much else for the day. I can't even think. All right. Second, their keen edge is dulled by heavy eating. Besides, they must take orders from slaves. So let's just break that one part. He says their keen edge is dulled by heavy eating. So that's the second point that he's making. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So he's saying they're not as sharp because they're eating by heavy eating. They don't have that sort of, when you fast for some time, you sort of develop this edge, this keen edge where you're kind of more active and focused, right? Accordingly, or he says here, their keen edge is dulled by, Besides, they must take orders from slaves of the vilest stamp, men who alternate between the oil flask and the flagon, whose day passes satisfactorily if they have got up a good perspiration and quaffed. To make good what they have lost in sweat, huge draughts of liquor which will sink deeper because of their fasting. Drinking and sweating, is that the life? That it is the life of a dyspeptic. Okay, so a few things here. And you can always look at the notes here. I haven't been doing this in the other ones, but he's saying prize ring, the contestants were rubbed with oil before the fight began, right? So what he's saying is that you've got these guys, okay, where is the, all right, and who basically go between the oil that they put on from a bodybuilding kind of show, when they're working out. In fact, that's what he's saying. In the prize ring, the contestants were rubbed with oil before the fight began. So in the fight, okay, or drinking, right? So they're either they're alternating between those two things, okay, and their day is satisfactory. They have a good day if they got up a good perspiration and then drank what they lost in sweat by alcohol. All right, so not good company to keep, he's saying. And he's saying it's the life of a dyspeptic. And if we look at what dyspeptic is, he says a sort of dyspepsia accompanied by a fever and perspiration. All right, so a sickly person. It's the same as a sickly person is what he's saying here. So in verse 4, he says, now there are short and simple exercises which tire the body rapidly and so save our time, and time is something of which we ought to keep strict account. Okay, remember the first letter, right? Time. All right. These exercises are running, brandishing weights, and jumping. High jumping or broad jumping, or the kind which I may call the priest's dance, which let's just go ahead and look and see what that says. Named the Sali, or the leaping priests of Mars. Okay, interesting. I'm curious what that is, or in sledding terms, the clothes cleaners jump, which again, we could look that one up. The fuller or washerman cleanse the clothes by leaping and stamping upon them in a tub. Okay, interesting stuff here. But what he's saying here is that there's some simpler things that you can do, right? Which will tire the body rapidly. And he's talking about actually, running, brandishing weights, so lifting weights, jumping. All right. So it's interesting. I wonder what is he talking about what these other guys are doing when you can just do something efficiently if you want to get the body in shape. And this is something actually that I do. I work out twice a week as far as lifting, and I only do 25 to 30 minutes, and that's it. I just do one set to failure, full body exercises. It's a pretty crazy thing, but it works. It actually works really well. So it's interesting. And for most of my life, I had worked out, in the gym, 2-hour sessions, 3, 4, 5 times a week. All right. But now I'm doing something a lot more efficiently. I found the same thing in running. When you run at a high intensity, you can get the results that you would of running a lot. Not exactly. I mean, if obviously you're trained for a marathon, but anyway, I don't want to divert from the subject, but that's basically what he's saying here. Okay, so in verse 5 he says, "But whatever you do, come back soon from body to mind. The mind must be exercised both day and night, for it is nourished by moderate labor, and this form of exercise need not be hampered by cold or hot weather, or even by old age. Cultivate that good which improves with the years." So he's saying here, look, yeah, okay, yeah, work out the body. That's fine if you want to do that, but come back to the mind, because the mind, it has to be worked day and night. Like it's not something that, but here's the good thing about it is that it doesn't matter if it's whatever the weather is, whatever's going on, you can still work out the mind, right? Whereas the body, the cold and weather, that kind of stuff, the cold weather, hot weather, it's going to sort of hamper your development there. It's going to be harder to work out. And he's saying that the thing about this is that even old age doesn't, the body is going to suffer from old age, but the mind doesn't necessarily have to. And he's saying cultivate that which improves with the years. So the mind can improve with the years. The body, we know, is not going to improve with the years over time. It's eventually going to decay. In verse 6, he says, "Of course, I do not command you to be always bending over your books and writing your materials and your writing materials. The mind must have a change, but a change of such a kind that is not unnerved, but merely unbent. Riding in a litter shakes up the body and does not interfere with study. One may read, dictate, converse, or listen to another, nor does walking prevent any of these things." So without getting into all of the details of exactly, this, what he's basically saying here, okay, is he's saying, look, here's the thing, all right? You don't have to be reading and studying all the time, all right? But your mind has to have a change. You can't just, you can't be doing all this stuff all the time studying, okay? But the kind of change that you need, it doesn't have to be an extreme change. You can ride around in a carriage, okay, and while you're going somewhere, you can be studying, right? It doesn't interfere with your study. You can read, you can dictate, you can converse, you can listen to people, you can talk to people, right? Walking, same thing. You can walk around, and so it's still a change, but you can still think about philosophy and think about your life and figure things out while you're walking. In fact, a lot of the most famous inventors actually had their ideas while they were going for a walk. There's a lot of quotes about that as well. So in verse 7, he says, "You need not scorn voice culture, but I forbid you to practice raising and lowering your voice by scales and specific intonation." So voice culture is this idea of training the voice, training for oration, for speaking, for singing. And he's saying you don't need to scorn it, okay? It's not a horrible thing, but you don't need to practice raising and lowering your voice by scales and specific intonations. You don't need to do that. That's what he's saying here. What if you should next propose to take lessons in walking, right? So he's saying that it's so silly. You already can naturally do this. Why are you training something that, so I'm going to give you lessons in walking? If you consult the sort of person whom starvation has taught new tricks, you will have someone to regulate your steps. Watch every mouthful as you eat, and go to such lengths as yourself by enduring him and believing him and encouraging his effrontery to go. Okay, this one's a little bit hard to break down, even for me. And some of this stuff is going to be hard, right? But it's okay, because the idea is I don't want you to get discouraged if you're reading through Seneca or any of the older texts, and you don't get every single piece of everything. It's fine. I mean, there's stuff you can look up, and you can look up interpretations of things, but primarily we're trying to get the main component of it, of what he's saying. And so we will try to break this down. So he says, okay, if you consult with the sort of person whom starvation has taught new tricks. So what does that mean? Again, I'll show you my process of doing this. The person who starvation has taught new tricks. Okay, so someone who was starving potentially, and they learned something from that. You will have someone to regulate your steps. So to monitor what you're doing, okay, to regulate your steps, to help you, okay, and then watch every mouthful as you eat, okay, and go to such lengths as you yourself, okay, by enduring him and believing in him. Okay, so we'll break this apart. If you consult the sort of person whom starvation has taught new tricks, so this kind of person that has learned from starvation, you will have someone to regulate your steps, watch every mouthful as you eat, and go to such lengths as yourself. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to regulate your steps, watch every mouthful as you're eating, and go to such lengths as yourself. So it's someone who, it's like, I learned something from starvation, and let me show you. I will show you how to eat. Okay. By enduring him and believing in him. Okay. So basically by essentially encouraging him, you have, or by by listening to what he's saying, you've encouraged his effrontery to go. All right, so let's look up effrontery if you're not familiar with that word, because this can kind of give us the key to the castle here, and it means insolent or impertinent behavior. So my interpretation of this, okay, is that what he's saying here is, look, if you consult with a person who has starved himself and now he's an expert in starvation, he's going to watch every mouthful and help you to do what? All right. You're going to encourage him. If you listen to what he's saying, you're going to encourage him in his ridiculousness. All right. So he says, what then, you will ask, is my voice to begin at the outset with shouting and straining the lungs to the utmost? Okay. So, okay. If you're saying don't listen to these voice people, okay, and you're comparing them to people giving lessons in walking, and you're comparing them to someone who learned starvation and is now teaching me how to eat, which is how I translate that. Again, I could be wrong, but it seems like it to me. Anyway, the gist of it is that same thing. Okay, then he's saying, what am I supposed to do? Just start yelling? just not actually train my voice at all? Just shout and strain myself to the highest degree? He said, no. The natural thing is that to be aroused to such a pitch by easy stages, just as persons who are wrangling begin with the ordinary conversational tones and then pass to shouting at the top of their lungs. No speaker cries, "Help me, citizens," at the outset of his speech. So he's saying, look, you don't need someone to train you on how to speak. It will just naturally come. It's don't be like, oh, am I just supposed to yell? No, if when you get to the point where it makes sense to raise your voice, then you will do it. You're not going to just have to practice doing that thing. And then, and again, he's got some good points in this, but there is, some use to vocal training, but I think people were taking it too far. And especially a lot of the guys then that he was talking to. Okay. So he says here in verse 8, therefore, whenever your spirit's impulse prompts you, raise a hubbub, now in louder, now in milder tones, according as your voice as well as your spirit shall suggest you. When you are moved to such a performance, then let your voice, when you rein it in and call it back to earth, come down gently and not collapse. It should trail off in tones halfway between high and low, and should not abruptly drop from its raving and uncouth manner of countrymen. For purpose is not to give the voice exercise, but to make it give us exercise. Okay, so he's kind of saying, look, this is all you really need to know. All right. And again, I don't know how practical this is for us today, but you can kind of apply this to some common sense things when people are telling you stuff that is pretty common sense. Look, here's the thing. It's going to automatically happen. All right. You just follow what makes sense. All right, so when your voice prompts you to raise a hubbub and be louder and milder, then you go louder and milder, or go to milder tones. And when you feel like that's what you should be doing, okay, just let your voice go the direction that it's going to go. It's going to go high. It's going to go low. That's fine. All right. It's not the idea. He's saying it's not to give the voice exercise, but instead to make it give you exercise, in the sense that let the voice lead you, or you are going to determine how your voice is going to be based on what you're trying to communicate, not the other way around. All right. And then in verse 9 he says, you see, I have relieved you of no slight bother, and I shall throw in a little complimentary present. It is Greek too. Here is the proverb. It is an excellent one. The fool's life is empty of gratitude and full of fears. Its course lies wholly toward the future. Okay, we'll repeat that one. The fool's life is empty of gratitude and full of fears. Its course lies wholly towards the future. Who uttered these words, you say? The same writer whom I mentioned before. And what sort of life do you think is meant by the fool's life? That of Baba in Izio. Okay, so we got to look at these notes in order to really break this part down. So Epicurus, okay, no surprise there. These guys were court fools of the period. Okay, so what is he saying here? If we break this down, he's saying, look, this is what a fool does. Okay, he looks to the future. He's full of fear. He doesn't have gratitude for what he has. He just keeps on fearing the future. All right, and he's saying, Epicurus uttered these words. Okay, and what sort of life do you think is meant by the fool's life? He's saying that of Baba and Izio. And who were they? They were court fools of the period, so jesters. All right. So that's what you'll be. You'll be like a jester. Okay. He says, no, he means our own. For we are plunged by our blind desires into ventures which will harm us, but certainly will never satisfy us. Okay. For if we could be satisfied with anything, we should have been satisfied long ago, nor do we reflect how pleasant it is to demand nothing, how noble it is to be contented and not to be dependent upon fortune. Okay. So, what is he saying here? He's saying, okay, no, it's not, it's not what you think, right? The sort of life you think is meant by the fool's life, it's not necessarily the court jester. He's saying that, no, it's you, okay? It means our own. Okay, we're plunged by our blind desires into ventures which will harm us. Okay, so we want these things, and they're driving us to things that are going to be bad for us, but they're not going to satisfy us. Because if we could have been satisfied, all right, then we would have been a long time ago. Okay, and now, how do we reflect our pleasant? It is to demand nothing. Okay, so basically, if we demand nothing, all right. And not to be, then we can be content, okay, and we won't depend upon fortune. And that again is the purpose of the Stoic, is to demand nothing, to be content with what is. That is really the underlying message. All right, in verse 10 he says, "Therefore continually remind yourself, Lucilius, how many ambitions you have attained. When you see many ahead of you, think how many are behind. If you would thank the gods and be grateful for your past life, you should contemplate how many men you have outstripped. But what have you to do with others? You have outstripped yourself." All right, so we'll break this down. He's saying, okay, remind yourself. All right, how many things have you done? Okay, and how when you see the many that are ahead of you, think about how many that you've already done. Okay, and so if you're going to thank the gods and be grateful for your past life, you should contemplate how many men that you have surpassed. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not even the thing. It's not, don't compare yourself to others. You have outstripped yourself. You've improved yourself. That's what we care about. Good job. Verse 11, fix a limit which you will not even desire to pass, should you have the power. At last, then, away with all these treacherous goods. They look better to those who hope for them than those who have attained them. If there were anything substantial in them, they would sooner or later satisfy you. As it is, they merely rouse the drinker's thirst. Okay, so let's take a moment to stop here. So he's saying, look, here's the deal. Fix a limit which you will not even desire to pass should you have the power. So I want you to think of a number, and I want you to say that, look, when I hit this, when I reach this, I will not, I don't even want to make any more money. I don't want to even become more successful. Okay? Then at least, and again, this is not necessarily the best thing, but at least if you do this, then at last, you'll be away with all these treacherous goods. Okay, so then if you do this, then what is he saying? They look better to those who hope for them than who have attained them, and this is very true, right? Have you found this to be true in your life? Is that the things that you want, they look better to you before you've gotten them. But once you get them, they're not so good. So they look better to the person who hasn't gotten them yet. And he says, if there were anything substantial in them, you would sooner or later satisfy you. So if, how many times have you wanted something and then you got it and now you're still not satisfied? So do you think that it's ever going to be any different than that? It's not. It's never going to be any different than that. So stop. If it were, it would have already worked. Okay, so it's keep on doing the same thing. It's not going to work if it didn't work before. As it is, they merely rouse the drinker's thirst. So they just make you want more things. All right, away with the fripperies, which only serve for show. let's look up fripperies. I'm gonna guess this is like trivial things, but let's see what he said there. Frippery, show or unnecessary ornament in architecture, dress, or language. Okay, so yeah, so unnecessary things. All right. As to what the future's uncertain lot has in store, why should I demand a fortune that she give, rather than demand of myself that I should not crave? So why is it that you think that you should get some things? How about just not wanting them? Like, how about we fix the problem that way, right? It's equally as fair, right? Why do you demand a fortune that she give? You could just not want, all right? And why should I crave? Shall I heap up my winnings and forget that a man's lot is unsubstantial? For what end should I toil? Lo, today is the last. If not, it is near the last. Farewell. Okay, this is a little complicated, but it's not that much. He's saying here at the end here, look, all right, why do I even crave things? Why do I even want things? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna heap up my winnings and forget that all the stuff that I get is gonna disappear anyway. I can't keep it where I'm going. Right. So what is why amass this stuff? Why amass this success? What is the purpose of amassing these things? Okay. Because he's saying like, it's like you should live as if today's the last day. What good would it do you then? And if not, it's near the last. Okay. Because you're not going to live forever. So stop striving for these things that aren't going to make you happy anyway. And then when you accumulate them, what is it? What purpose does it serve? It doesn't any, and I think there's a lot of value in this. Just thinking about this again, this letter, I think at the beginning of it, okay, so there's some stuff about using the mind instead of the body, not really deep insights. But then when you get into this part of it, that's where the real meat is here, right? Just this concept of think about it, right? Like, how much stuff are you working for that is it really even going to bring you happiness at all? Is it? How many things have you achieved already? Have they brought you happiness? Are you happier? Or do you just want more? Right? Is that the case? And then even when you get all this stuff, what are you going to do with it? You can't take it with you. So what are you working so hard for, honestly? Like, for what? If it's not to build yourself and your character, then what is it? And that also, it coincides with what he talked about with the body. If you build up your muscles in your body, again, what for? You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be stronger than a bull. You're not going to take it with you. It's going to decline when you age anyway. You can't keep that up forever. So think carefully about the purpose of the things that you do. I'll see you tomorrow.